I'm Debbie and Lesta is on camera today. I hope you've had a great summer and I am back ready to do live, so look for a live by myself or another team member of Peak to Peak Stitching Fridays, and we video at 9 a.m. and if you can't make the 9 a.m. you have 30 days to view us. So I finished up my Who Lives in the Woods quilted book. Now I did really over quilt this and I used a really heavy batting in this. But I think it turned out really fun, and my granddaughter can also use it as a pillow because it's super thick because of all the batting in it. That was a fun activity to do. Today I'm going to show you how to do an aspen leaf. This is going to finish out as a 6-inch by 6-inch leaf when it's all done. And I have another purpose for that later in the year. So to get started, you're going to need 6 strips, so that's with the fabric, and they are going to be 1 3/4 inches cuts with the fabric. You're going to sew all of them together, and then when you're finished sewing them together, before you press the seams, you want to cut them in half. Well, it looks like I got opposite halves here. Let's go over here. There we go. You're going to cut them in half, and then you're going to press, one of them you will press up, and one of them you will press down. And the reason why you want to do that is because when you cut your blocks into the 8-inch pieces, and how did I come up with the 8 inches? I measured the width of my fabric, and then that's what I determined because I wanted to make a square cut. So now I have I've cut these into 8-inch squares, and I have, one is stitching down, or one is pressed down, and one, well, it looks like it's down when I pick it up like that, and one is pressed up. So I'm going to nest those seams together. They don't have to be nested perfectly, but you do want to have your block square so that the two pieces, you have a point here and point here and point here and point here, are all matching. And then you're going to cut diagonally across it. A little wobbly table here. Make sure you got that cut. It's very important that you keep them with the seams butting up together, okay? So then when it's very important that you cut it all the way too. It doesn't work without it. There we go. I should have done that to begin with, lifted it up. So I'm going to take you in the room in a minute and show you how to sew these together so that you get all of your seams matching up wonderfully. So when you open it up, you've got the beginning of your aspen leaf, and then when you open up this one, it's the opposite colors, it goes opposite direction. There. And this is why you wanted to do your seams one down and one up, is so that you didn't have a heavy bulky seam right here. Anyway, I'll take you in the room in a minute and I'm going to show you how to sew these together. And then get those sewn together. You want to sew your stem up part up. And so this is a 4-inch square. This is a 1-inch piece. And I am going to cut this diagonally across. And then I'll show you in the other room how to sew these pieces together. Here. Take this one and this one to make this piece here. So I don't have a cutting surface in the other room available to show you. That's why we're going to do it opposite of just sitting down and showing you how to get it together. And this piece here, I've cut and I've trimmed it up to 3.5 inches by 3.5 inches. And then I'm going to, whoops, no, I'm not going to cut that in half. Wow, I almost messed that up. I'm going to take this in the other room and I'm going to sew it onto a leaf here. And then these are 2-inch sky pieces, and they are going to go here and here. And I'll show you how to sew those on. So let's go into the, whoops, let's see. I want these two, and this one, and this one. Let's go into the other room, and I'll show you how to sew them together. So this is our wall hanging for our foundation paper piecing. You can tell we're all ready for fall. We've got the elk bugling, and we've got the aspen leaves. Get my foot pedal in the right position. And my hands free bar because I love having my third hand here. And Les is going to shoot for right here, right in this area here, so you can see what we're doing here. I need to drop my stitch length down to 2. And the first thing I'm going to sew together is this pair here. So this is going to make the aspen yellow. And remember, I have the seam pressed up and the seam pressed down. And I'm going to start by just focusing on the first joining of the seam there. And I've nested them together just by using my fingers. And this is where the hands free is nice because it holds the, or lifts the foot while I'm stitching. So I'm going to do a 1/4 inch seam here. I'm going to get that first seam done. Now I'm going to focus on making sure that this next seam will come together. And I can fill it. You can just fill it with your fingers. I'm going to do the next one. This is always a gamble doing it live. That one there may be a little bit apart because I can feel that I separated that. But sometimes with your pressing you can fix that. We'll see here in just a minute. Now notice I didn't backstitch at the beginning of this. That causes extra bulk and it also has a tendency to stretch your points out. And it's all going to be sewn up at the end anyway. I just don't pull on those seams until I get there. So let the machine do its thing here. It's a little off down here. That's okay because it would be going back in and getting trimmed to 6.5. I'm more concerned about those seams joining together. Okay, here's the big reveal. It's like taking a test. Did I do it or did I not? I did. Yay! Okay, if you happen to be a little off, check out which way to press. If you press this way and it doesn't, and it looks gappy, you might be surprised at what you can get by pressing it the opposite way when you get your points in. Okay, good. That's an A. I'm glad that's over. Okay, now for the stem, I cut it in half already. So I'm going to sew this together, and I want this here. This here was a piece that I cut off when I was trimming up to my 8.5 by 8.5. So it's a 1-inch piece. And I always just kind of balanced my sky points in between the yellow of the aspen leaf together and making sure that I have about the same distance top and bottom. And I'm going to let them sew this together. You don't want to press this until you get both sides sewn on. Oops, I'm a little wonky here. I am working on sewing a bias. You're going to trim this down, so don't panic if, see how it's stretching down here at the end? It's okay, because it gets trimmed up when it's done. So I'm going to open this up. I'm going to just gently finger press this because I'm actually going to press it the opposite way. And I'm going to lay the next piece on. Now this one here, I am just balancing the edges from here to here to kind of keep it centered, because if you go too wonky, you won't be able to trim it down to the size that you want when you're done. Here. Fix this wonky. So when you're doing small pieces, and this is going to turn out to be a 1/2 inch seam, you do want to try to get somewhat straight here, or it'll really show, and I'm getting very wonky. Can't be nerves. I'm going to do this live, so this is not going to be an A. Oh, definitely not an A. I just got to give myself a C on that one. But that's okay, it would trim up, so then it could be a B. So open it up, and you see if I was really off on this, it would definitely pull in and it would show there. Now when you're taking this over to press it, you want to press your stem in. That'll give it a little bit of dimension in it. So I would press both seams in. See how I did this one right here? They're both pressed in. And then I trimmed it down to a 3.5. So then I want to get my sew straight. And I'm going to line it up with my marks on my machine here. Everybody has different marks on the machine, so you need to figure out which ones are right. But this is your straight line that you're looking for. And I have trimmed my block down to 6.5 inches, so it'll finish at 6 inches. Then I'm going to lay this stem on here, lining up the points, noticing the seam of the stem is going along the line of the Aspen joint. I'm sure there's a proper name for that. Okay, so now I'm going to sew from this point to this point, and with my sew straight, notice that I'm up here on the point, and then I keep my point of my sky on that area. I'm going to sew that across. Whoops. Whoops, stop. Take your foot off the pedal. I'm going to push this back. I'm going to pull it back a little bit because you saw how that folded over. And then I'm going to stitch there, and I'm just cut it back up. Okay, so then when I trim it, there's my stem. So I would trim quarter of an inch away from here and press this back, and there would be my stem. And I'm going to do the same thing with these 2-inch squares over here. And I'm using the sew straight again from this point to this point down here. And then again, I'm going to do this point to this point. Make sure you sew them because you don't want to sew up here at the end of your leaf. I love the sew straight. If you don't have a sew straight, you're going to want to draw a line across there and then stitch on your line. So then when I finish, it goes like this. I trim it off. Make sure you trim on the outside edge. I know sometimes we get really turned around and sometimes we trim wrong. And then we are stuck with a wonky leaf that looked like the bugs got a hold of it. And there is your aspen leaf. I hope you have a great week. We'll see you next week.